Welcome to Utopia. Guys, we're finally going back to the origins and we're talking again about the approbation in Germany, concentrating more in the indirect pathway. This is the first of a three videos series in which we will be talking about the very beginning, being the giving all of the documents and finding the right region in which to apply and how you should apply, and whether you should do only FSP and Kenntnisprüfung or not, and how this works. We will also be talking about the FSP once again, and then we will also be talking about the Kenntnisprüfung, three videos for the three parts. Over this time, you guys know I didn't do the Kenntnisprüfung myself, so I cannot be telling you from my own experience. But for that, I brought a team. This is the team of the Mede Online. This is an academy that makes courses for doctors who want to do the FSP and the Kenntnisprüfung, and they themselves are doctors who, I guess, left the medicine and became professors on how to pass this exam. So later on, we will be asking them a couple of questions. First of all, I would like to introduce them. Dr. Lindek, thank you very much for coming and for gifting us with your time. I'm sure we will learn a lot from you today.
Hallo Guillermo, danke, dass du heute Mede Online bei dir hast. Freut uns.
So, starting today with the first video, let's get oriented. What is the difference between direct and indirect approbation, and how do I know which one is for me? The direct approbation is the one that is thought of for EU students who passed the exam within the EU, which, as you know, they have a similar standard for every country, so it doesn't really matter where you did the exam and where you became a doctor. We assume that every doctor in the EU knows the same, and therefore you don't need to prove that their knowledge. Since you don't need to prove their knowledge, all you need to do is prove their German knowledge. Therefore, they only have to do the FSP, the Fachspracheprüfung. They don't need to do the Kenntnisprüfung. And also the recognition of documents is much easier and much faster because it's within the European standard. So what is left? Everyone else, India, Middle East, anyone outside of the European Union falls within the indirect approbation pathway. They will need to present the documents. I'm assuming it takes longer. It's more difficult to recognize that they actually did everything correctly. And once the documents are approved, they do need to do the FSP just like everyone. But on top of that, the German Commission doesn't assume that non-EU doctors learned within the same standards as the EU doctors, and therefore their knowledge will have to be checked once again. That's why you have the KP, the Kenntnisprüfung. So, for those of you outside of the EU, let's see at every single step that you need to take. Step number one is learning German. If you don't speak German to a B2 to C1 level yet, then this is way too early for you. You can watch the video to know what comes afterwards, but you shouldn't be applying to the exams because it would be a waste of time. It is extremely important that you already know how to speak German fluent before you start the process of applying. Step number two, if you need a visa to stay in Germany, maybe start thinking about getting one. There are different ways of getting one. There's a working visa, there's a student visa, the blue visa, and I don't know much about it, but if you go to an academy in Germany to learn German, they will help you with it most likely. And as well, I often recommend people to start working as a practicant or as a hospitant in a hospital, because if you are working, then you do get a visa with it. And therefore, you are practicing your German and you're allowed to stay in Germany. And with the visa, later on, it will be easier to do all of your documents. Step number three, choose the federal state very wisely when it comes to presenting the documents. Unlike in any country that makes a bit of sense, in Germany, instead of processing all of the applications in one place, they decided to leave each region to process the applications. That means that you have 16 places that process the application, and you can only choose one of them. And once you send your documents to that one, you have to stick with that one. And ideally, all of them follow the same rules, but here's the thing. Each one of the 16 regions changes a bit the rules and the kind of documents they accept from you or not, and they change a little bit the conditions. So it is very important to know in which one of the 16 you want to apply. But how do you know which one is better for you? I also don't know. So I think we can ask the experts here. We have joining us today the Dr. Lindeck.
Bevor ich auf deine Frage zurückkomme, 2 Punkte, die wir ganz gern vorab betonen würden. Das eine ist, dass man daran denken sollte, dass das B2-Zertifikat nur für 2 Jahre gültig ist. Also Bewerber, die ihre Approbation einreichen, sollten sicherstellen, dass ihr Zertifikat nicht älter ist als 2 Jahre, weil das führt sehr häufig zu Problemen. Der zweite Punkt ist noch, dass seit Januar 2024 die Regierung den Prozess massiv beschleunigt und es für Ärzte deutlich günstiger gemacht hat, nach Deutschland zu kommen. Und das ist schon ein historischer Moment im deutschen Rechtssystem. Die Beantragung eines deutschen Passes dauert etwa 3 bis 5 Jahre und auch eine deutsche oder eine doppelte Staatsbürgerschaft ist erstmals möglich. Jetzt, um zu deiner eigentlichen Frage nochmal zurückzukommen, was die Region in Deutschland betrifft, die man wählen sollte, das hängt natürlich stark davon ab, je nach persönlicher und finanzieller Situation, wo sich derjenige befindet. Wenn du beispielsweise aus einem Nicht-EU-Land kommst und den Kenntnistest, also die sogenannte Kenntnisprüfung, nicht vermeiden kannst, dann solltest du ein Bundesland wählen, in dem die Prüfungen im Allgemeinen fairer sind oder fair sind, da du ja diese Prüfung ablegen musst und nicht drumherum kommst. Dafür gibt es jetzt keine offiziellen Richtlinien, aber wir haben natürlich Tipps gesammelt, die wir jetzt gleich euch weitergeben, die wir aus Facebook-Gruppen, Instagram, WhatsApp und natürlich auch durch ständigen Kontakt mit unseren Teilnehmern und Interviews gesammelt haben. Im Allgemeinen kann man sagen, dass die Kenntnisprüfungen in Hamburg und Schleswig-Holstein fair sind. Und im Allgemeinen kann man sagen, dass die Kenntnisprüfe in Münster, also Nordrhein-Westfalen und in Niedersachsen dafür bekannt sind, die schwierigsten zu sein. Ein weiter wichtiger Faktor ist, dass die Prüfungen in einigen Bundesländern viel teurer sind als in anderen Bundesländern. Wenn man jetzt sich die Preise anschaut, zum Beispiel für die Fachsprachprüfung, da ist die günstigste in Nordrhein-Westfalen mit 350 € und die teuerste ist in Hessen mit 650 € und in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern mit 600 €. Alle anderen Bundesländer haben Preise, die dazwischen liegen. Und für die Kenntnisprüfung, für die Preise, da ist die günstigste in Schleswig-Holstein mit 400 € und Thüringen 300 bis 400 € und die teuersten sind in Nordrhein-Westfalen mit 1050 € und Rheinland-Pfalz mit 1100 €. Die übrigen Bundesländer liegen dann wieder dazwischen. Aber abgesehen davon, wenn du nur eine Fachsprachprüfung ohne Kenntnisprüfung ablegen musst, gibt es einige Bundesländer, in denen dieser TELC-Test, dieses TELC-Fachsprachzertifikat akzeptiert wird, während es in anderen Bundesländern nicht der Fall ist.
Okay, does that mean that if I have already the TELC C1 in this special Bundesländer, I just don't have to do the exam at all, and in that case, I would just pass through?
Ja, also es gibt in den Bundesländern Schleswig-Holstein und Saarland wird dieses TELC-Fachsprachzertifikat anerkannt, auch in Hessen, aber dort nur für die EU-Bürger.
Well, that is great news. Step number 4. Once you already know where you want to apply, in which region, you need to find the Bezirksregierung that does process your application, and then you need to translate these documents and submit them. But how do you know the address and the telephone and the email and where the place is where you have to send these documents? Maybe our colleagues can help us. It's a bit of a mess when it comes to all of the Bezirksregierungen, and there are so many regions in Germany. Maybe you guys have a list of all of the contacts for all of the Bezirksregierungen that do process these applications.
Ja, klar. Wir haben eine Liste und die werden wir dir auch gerne zusenden. Wir werden dir auch eine Liste zukommen lassen mit offiziellen Übersetzern die in Deutschland eben für die Übersetzung der Dokumente akzeptiert werden. Man sollte auf keinen Fall inoffizielle Übersetzer aus anderen Ländern kontaktieren. Das ist wichtig.
After submitting all of your documents, they will be compared to the German similar version of them, and this process is called Gutachten. If it is complete, you will receive the Anerkennung, and therefore you don't have to do the Kenntnisprüfung, but most likely it is not going to be complete and you will have to do the Kenntnisprüfung anyway. Also, it may be the case that you can do an Anerkennung of like a 95% of everything you did in university, but there's a 5% that doesn't exactly match to the German standard. And you may ask them to do you an exam only for that 5% instead of doing an exam for the 100%, that would be the Kenntnisprüfung. This would be called a Gleichgewichtsprüfung. This, which may sound great because you only have to do a 5%, may actually be more difficult because in order to be able to do the Gleichgewichtsprüfung, you need to provide all of the documents with every single detail translated. And on top of that, if you do get accepted to do the exam of only the 5% that you're needing, this exam would be much more difficult than it would otherwise be. So it's not necessarily a benefit always. And here's the question, how can we actually know if it's worth it?
Die gute Nachricht ist, dass dein Universitätslehrplan akzeptiert wird, wenn du ihn auf Englisch hast. Andernfalls musst du ihn für das Gutachten vollständig ins Deutsche übersetzen lassen und ja, das ist teuer. Wichtig ist, denk dran, dass du alle Rechnungen aufbewahren solltest, die diesbezüglich angefallen sind und für die du Geld ausgegeben hast, weil du diese Ausgaben dann teilweise zurückerstattet bekommen kannst bei deiner jährlichen Steuererklärung. Über 95% der Diplome werden bei der Gleichwertigkeitsprüfung aber nicht vollständig anerkannt, sodass die Kenntnisprüfung nicht vermieden werden kann. Wenn du aber bereits Facharzt bist und hast in einer leitenden Position viele Jahre schon gearbeitet, zum Beispiel als leitender Arzt in der Inneren Medizin oder Chirurgie, dann kannst du die Approbation ohne Kenntnisprüfung erhalten. Außerdem haben einige Universitäten kompatible Lehrpläne. Also bleibe in Kontakt mit anderen Kollegen, die ihre Approbation in Deutschland schon erhalten haben, um sicher zu wissen, ob es sich lohnt. Außerdem kannst du, wenn du einen Abschluss außerhalb der EU hast, aber eine Approbation in irgendeinem der EU-Länder, kannst du direkt die Gleichwertigkeitsprüfung beantragen. Diese Prüfung allerdings ist ebenfalls schwierig oder kann schwierig sein und ist spezialisiert auf die Fächer, in denen du Defizite hast.
Step number 5. In parallel to all of the presentation of documents and getting approved or not in which way, you still need to prepare for the FSP, the Fachspracheprüfung, that checks your German skills. This exam is only a German exam, it is not a medical exam, although it has been seen sometimes that they do ask a little bit of medicine in it. I did already 3 videos about it, my first 3 videos of this channel, in which I told about my experience. And the coming video will be only about the FSP, in which we will ask our experts from Mede Online to give us their opinion and their experience preparing doctors for this exam. Now, if you pass the FSP, you cannot work yet because you still need to do the Kenntnisprüfung, but they give you a so-called Berufserlaubnis. A Berufserlaubnis is a document that says that you can work for 2 years before doing the Kenntnisprüfung and you can get paid for it. You cannot work 100% just like a normal resident doctor. This means you cannot sign and you cannot do night shifts, which admittedly are a great part of the salary, but you can work every day. And so it is possible for you to start getting clinical experience for 2 years and only do the Kenntnisprüfung exam after 2 years when you already have much more experience. And that way you sort of increase your chances of passing. And step number 7, as I said, you already practiced with the Berufserlaubnis for 1 to 2 years, And over this time, you have also been preparing for the Kenntnisprüfung, and it's finally time to do the exam. The Kenntnisprüfung, unlike the FSP, can only be done 3 times. This means you can only fail 2 times. The third time you must pass. If you don't pass the third time, you're not given a third chance and you're out of Germany. So it's very important that you're very well prepared. To prepare you for this exam, in 2 videos. Next video is FSP. The video after that is the Kenntnisprüfung. We will go about to some details on what is important and some tips and tricks and typical mistakes that people make preparing for this exam. So I think it's very important to check it out. And step number 8, after doing the Kenntnisprüfung, if you passed, then you get your final Anerkennung, your recognition, and